Nick, ready. Present. Fire. Priming load.
It is a flintlock musket and it's smooth bore, which means the inside of this barrel is just as smooth as the outside. It is lacking rifling. There is no groove or spiral cut down the barrel to put a spin on the musket ball. This, instead of spinning it out there, kind of lobs the musket ball out. At a range of 100 yards, which is about the distance from our land gate behind you to the water gate back behind this building, a well-trained soldier should be able to hit a me-sized target at that distance somewhere. Might hit the hat, might hit the shoe, might even be dead center, but it should be somewhere on that man-sized target at 100 yards. At 200 or 300 yards, this weapon is still deadly. The musket ball is not just going to drop out of the air, it's going to keep on going and keep doing damage. But if you got hit at 200 or 300 yards, you could take some comfort in knowing whoever shot you probably wasn't aiming at you. You were simply in the wrong spot at the wrong time. After about 150 yards, it becomes very, very difficult to hit your target with this smoothbore weapon. So maybe not as accurate as some of our modern weapons. It also has some issues with its reliability or how often it actually works. The way it works or doesn't work, this mechanism on the side of the barrel, the flintlock. We've got our piece of flint here, just a very sharp piece of stone, opposite of a piece of steel on a hinge. Now when I pull the trigger, that flint should fly forward. It should strike the steel and that should create sparks. Those sparks should land in this small tray on the side of the barrel where a little bit of black powder should be waiting. That black powder should ignite and should send a jet of flame through a small toothpick-sized hole in the side of the barrel, which should ignite the main charge you'll be dumping down the muzzle end. There's a lot of steps and a lot of shoulds. If even one of those steps doesn't work, the musket's not gonna go off. But on a bright, beautiful, good weather day, kind of like what we've got going on right now, it should work most of the time. My experience, about 90% reliable in good weather. That means maybe take 10 shots, maybe one of those shots isn't gonna work. Of course, that is nice weather. If it's rainy, snowy, windy, or even just a little bit too humid outside, the chances of this working drop a little bit further. So it doesn't work 100% of the time, can't hit targets at too far of a distance with it. By itself, it might not seem like that great of a weapon. But in the 18th century, this is never by itself, and it's what you got. You're gonna have to make do. Doesn't matter if you're fighting for the British, the Americans, French, Russians, Prussians, Austrians, Spanish, they're all using something very similar to this. They'll have different names for it, different style changes on the outside, but it'll all boil down to is smooth metal pipe, flintlock mechanism. All those same drawbacks in accuracy and reliability, no matter which army you're fighting for. So to make this a good weapon, you have to change up how you fight with it. Have you ever seen TV shows or movies that try to recreate the era of the American Revolution? Might be able to picture those soldiers out in these big open fields, standing shoulder to shoulder, nice long lines, and all firing at the same time. We tend to look back at that and think, that's kind of a silly way to fight. That's because we have machine guns, cruise missiles, tanks, and they had this. And if you've got this, it's actually a pretty good way to fight. It will take care of some of the disadvantages of this. That reliability, well, if you've got 100 of these muskets, That 90% reliability means around 90 working muskets, the majority of them. Yours might not go off, but it really won't matter. There'll be enough working ones around you to give you some safety in numbers. And if you're all lined up firing at the same time, you can create a wall of bullets. And you don't need to be as accurate of a wall of bullets. Someone's going to hit something. That will stretch the useful range of this from only 100 yards to 2, possibly even 300 yards, just by the sheer number of musket balls headed towards the enemy. At the same time, though, you can't just hand this off to someone, expect them to know how to load it, fire it quickly and effectively. You have to train them. And that training would take place right here. This is the parade ground where the soldiers of the garrison would go to drill. And imagine drill just being school for soldiers. Go over all the basics of marching, fighting in formation, loading and firing your musket over and over and over and over again, drilling it in, building up muscle memory, and improving the skills you need to properly use one of these muskets. But speaking of using these muskets, I do believe it's time for me to take a step back and fire off a couple shots for you folks. The first one I'm going to do is going to be the long, slow training process that you'd see here at drill. Everything's broken down step by step. Great for learning, not so great if someone is shooting back at you though. So my second volley should be a little bit quicker, more of a battlefield style of doing it. Now, a couple of warnings before I do begin. The first one is that this is a firearm. It can be a little bit loud. You may wish to protect your hearing. A great time to cover your ears is when you hear me give the command, "Make ready!" After that, I'll level the musket and hopefully get a shot off. Which brings me to warning number 2, hopefully get a shot off. With me all by myself, I might pull the trigger and nothing happens. Don't worry, that's a historically accurate misfire. I will simply reprime and try again. All I ask from you is your pity, and imagine there are a whole lot more troops out here, and their muskets worked a little bit better than mine. But let's see what we can do. Patrick, take care. Poise your firelock. 1, 2. Cock your firelock. 1, 2. Handle cartridge. Prime. Shot hand. 1, 2. Charge whip cartridge. Draw rammer. Ram down cartridge. Return rammer. Shoulder your firelock. 1, 2. Make ready. Present. Fire! As I said, not 100% reliable. I just put a new flint in here, and apparently my musket's a little bit strong, as the flint has chipped into a couple pieces. So I'm going to reprime this really quick. But this goes to show why it was so important to have so many people out there on the battlefield. If you're all by yourself as some kind of Colonial Rambo and your musket stops working, it's going to be a bad day. Let's try this again. Make ready. Present. Fire. Yay! Much better. Make ready. Present. Fire.
Maybe you can do it, Steven.
So besides the actually not very historically accurate couple of misfires, you may have seen a problem with doing that style if someone was shooting back at you. You may have heard me call it 1, 2. Those are pauses built in to make sure everyone's sticking together as they load. Good for training, not so great in the battlefield. It's also a lot of commands to listen for. If you've got a bunch of cannons and a bunch of muskets, you're not going to be able to hear all those commands. So in actual battle, the officers of the army would be putting their faith that these are soldiers, this is what they've been trained for. You don't have to walk them through step by step. Let's see if we can speed this up and hopefully not get any more misfires. The battlefield command of prime and load! It's all the same steps, just not all the talking. A well-trained soldier expects to do this whole process in around 15 to 20 seconds, which might not seem very fast to us today. Back then, this thing can become the machine gun of its day. You just need a whole lot more of them to get that same rate of fire. Make ready. Present.